Hey guys, welcome to our math lesson. Let's go ahead and get started by reading our learning target. I can measure the length of an object by choosing and using appropriate tools. I'll know that I'm successful with that when I can use measuring tools correctly, understand the difference in measuring tools and units, and choosing the best tool for an object, okay? So let's go ahead and let's look at what that word measure means. Measure means to find the length, the height, or the weight by comparing it to an unknown unit. So when we're looking for that object, we can measure it. We can find the length, the height, or the weight of it, okay? Now let's look at that word length because that's what our learning target asks us to do. I can measure the length. Length is the measurement that tells the distance from one point to another, or how long something is. So we are measuring to see how long an object is by choosing appropriate tools. Now let's look at this word units, because what is on that tool are the units. And a unit is a part that is used to measure, okay? Now we've learned about a couple of different units, or those parts that are used to measure. One of them we have learned about is inches. Inches is a unit of length. Remember, there are 12 inches in 1 foot, okay? And remember, that's where we talked about the ruler. The ruler is a measurement that tells, the ruler is a measurement tool that is marked in inches and centimeters, okay? So 12 inches is on a ruler. The other unit that is found on a ruler are centimeters. Centimeters are a very small unit of length. And remember, we can think about centimeters by the length across our pinky. That is about 1 centimeter. So it is very small. Yesterday, we looked at a couple of other types of units. We looked at feet, right? There are 12 inches in 1 foot. We also looked at yards. Yards is where we take, where 3 feet equals 1 yard, and it's also a type of unit of length or measurement of length. Okay, and then we have meters, which is 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. And a meter is also a type of measurement that is used for length. We're going to talk more about these larger units of measure today: feet, meters, and yards. Okay, so this will help us to choose the best tool for an object and understand the differences in the different types of measuring tools and the units that are on those measuring tools, okay? All right, so we're going to be in our Ready Math Journal on page 519. 519. Now, the try it activity today is going to be a little hard for you to do. What this try it activity wanted you to do was to measure your desk. Now, you are not at school, so you don't have a desk like it's asking you to measure. But what it wants you to think about is measuring a larger item with your ruler. So when you try to measure a larger item with your ruler, how can you find the length of that item? Because remember, a ruler only has 12 inches or 30 centimeters. So how would you measure something larger than this ruler of 12 inches or 30 centimeters? What would you do? Okay, so I want you to be thinking about that as we get through our lesson today. All right, so now we have a way that they're telling us that we could measure this rather than using a ruler here. So we can use different types of measuring tools like a tape measure that also has inches and centimeters on it. So when we're using a ruler, a tape measure, a yardstick, a meter stick, anything like that, we always start in the same place. The beginning of our object starts where on our measuring tool? It starts on the 0 or at the end of that object, right? And then we take and we look all the way across to the end and look at the number on the measuring tool that's underneath it, okay? So a measuring tape was one tool that you could use. Now here, they took 2 rulers and they lined them up to find the length of a desk. So they started the first one at the edge of the object on the 0. And then when you get all the way to the end to 12 inches, they took that second ruler and lined it up on 12 inches and then went across. How would we find the length of this desk with these 2 rulers? How would we do that? We would have to add, wouldn't we? So we have 12 plus 1, 13, plus 2, 14, plus 3, 15, plus 4, 16, plus 1, 17, plus 1, 18, plus 1, 19, plus 1, 20. So it is about, the length of that desk is about 20 inches. I know that because this one ruler has 12 inches, and then we lined up our second ruler on that, at the 12, right, at the end of that, and then I counted to the end of that second ruler. Now here, a ruler would not be an appropriate tool to use to measure a desk. It worked, but there are other appropriate tools, and that goes back to our success criteria, being able to determine or choose the best measuring tool for the object that you have, okay? All right, so now it's wanting us to just think. We know that the desk is closer to 1 foot or 2 feet. Remember, 12 inches is 1 foot. So was the desk closer to 1 foot or 2 feet? It was closer to 2 feet. It was over 1 foot. So we had to use that second ruler. Now what it wants us to do is look at objects that can be measured with a yardstick. Remember, a yard is 3 feet. So here we have 1 foot, 2 feet, and 3 feet, which equals the same total of inches as the yardstick. So what it wants us to do is it's saying that 1 yard equals 3 feet and 1 yard equals 36 inches, because in 3 feet there are 36 inches. So there's a piece of yarn, and it wants us to measure this yarn with the yardstick. So with any measuring tool that we use, we start the beginning of our object where on our measuring tool? At the 0, if there's not a 0 at the beginning, right? So that is where this piece of yarn is starting. Then we go all the way across to see where our yarn has ended. We look at that number on our measuring tool right below that object, and this one is at 33. So how long is this rope? It is 33 inches. Now it wants us to measure this yarn in a foot. So it says to the nearest foot. So how many feet is this piece of yarn? Remember, 12 inches is 1 foot. So we have 1 foot, 2 foot, and 3 feet. So it is closer to 3 feet. And then to the nearest yard, remember, 36 inches or 3 feet is 1 yard. So this piece of rope is about 1 yard. Okay? So I want you to think, what would be the most appropriate tool to use to measure this yarn? Would it be the most appropriate to use inches, feet, or a yardstick? What would be the most appropriate? The yardstick would be the most appropriate tool because it has a many inches on that one tool, right? All right, now let's go ahead and flip the page and look at some more examples. All right, go ahead and turn to page 522. All right, question number 4. Circle the objects that are easier to measure with an inch ruler. Underline the objects that are easier to measure with a yardstick. So think about your inch ruler. What size items would we use to measure with an inch ruler? What size items would we use to measure with a yardstick? Okay? All right, so circle the ones that would be easier to use with an inch ruler. Underline the objects that we would use to measure with a yardstick. So a car. Would it be a more appropriate tool to use an inch ruler or a yardstick? A yardstick because it is a larger object, right? Would it be more appropriate to use an inch ruler or a yardstick to measure a shoe? Yeah, an inch ruler because a lot of our feet are smaller than 12 inches, okay? What about a stamp? Would it be more appropriate to use an inch ruler or a yardstick to measure a stamp? It would be more appropriate to use an inch ruler. What about an envelope? Would it be more appropriate to measure an envelope with an inch ruler or a yardstick? Yes, an inch ruler. Okay, this is your classroom, but let's think about your room at home. Okay, so just take out class. Your room at home, would it be more appropriate to measure it with an inch ruler or with a yardstick? Yes, with a yardstick because we are measuring larger things with a yardstick and smaller things with an inch ruler. Do you notice that in the items that we have circled? What do those items have in common? They're all smaller, right? The car and in your room at home are larger objects, so they are measured with a larger measuring tool because that's more appropriate. All right, now number 5, use a ruler, measure the feather to the nearest inch. All right, go ahead and do that. I want to see if you can meet that success criteria of using the ruler correctly. All right, about how long is this feather? It is about 5 inches long. Remember, you start the beginning of the object on the 0 or at the end if it does not have a 0 on it, okay? Then you look all the way across to the end of the object and look at the number below it. Sometimes it might be found in between the numbers on there, and we will talk more about measuring those kind of items later on. All right, number 6. Vivian measures her wagon. She says that it is about 2 feet long. Maddox says that it is about 3 feet long. Who is correct? Explain your answer. All right, go ahead and answer that question. When you're done, you may unpause the video to continue. All right, so I'm looking here. There's a yardstick or part of a yardstick, and then there are 2 rulers here. I know that one ruler is 1 foot, and 2 rulers is 2 feet. You can even see 2 feet here on the yardstick. 2FT stands for feet, okay? So, who is correct? Vivian says it's about 2 feet long, or Maddox that says it's about 3 feet long. Vivian is correct. Vivian is correct because if we look, this wagon is right here, about right here is where the handle is. And so that would be 2 rulers. And remember, each ruler is 1 foot. Even though we can't read the exact amount of inches on here, I know that 1 ruler holds 12 inches, so 2 ruler holds 24 inches. So 24 inches is about 2 feet. So Vivian is correct. All right, guys, let's reflect back on our learning target and our success criteria. I can measure the length of an object by choosing and using appropriate tools. Were you able to use the measuring tools correctly today? Are you beginning to understand the difference between different measuring tools and the units on those different measuring tools? Are you able to see why you would choose a yardstick over a ruler when measuring objects? Do you see that? Or why you would choose a ruler over a yardstick? Okay, if you are able to do those things, you are meeting our success criteria. All right, guys, we will continue practicing with measurement and being able to choose those appropriate tools and units. Bye.